Good evening. I'm Councillor Annabel Blackmore, the Chairman of the Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting in the committee this evening. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else present be recording the proceedings? I ask so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening. If the fire alarm sounds, which it did at the last meeting, if you all remember, if it sounds, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team seated to my right will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if this is deemed necessary. So with that, if we could move on to the agenda, please, members. Agenda item 1, we have received apologies from Councillor Kimantz. I don't think there are any other apologies due. Item 2, substitute members. Councillor English.
Councillor English substituting for Councillor Kimantz.
Perfect, thank you very much. Item 3, urgent items. We do have an urgent item relating to fees and charges for 24-25. This was circulated by email on Monday, and there are hard copies in front of you this evening. I'm not suggesting we take a break to read them because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Is that agreed, members? Thank you. Item 4, notification of visiting members. Unless they're hiding, I can't see any visiting members, but they could arrive later. We're forever hopeful. Item 5, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures that anyone needs to make? No? Okay, thank you. Item 6, disclosures of lobbying. Are there any disclosures anybody would like to make? No? Okay. So item 7, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. Now, you will note that we do have some yellow papers, and I move that all items be taken in public unless any member of the committee wishes to refer specifically to the information contained within item 15, exempt appendix, to item 14, statement of common ground for the Lower Thames crossing, in which case the committee will need to enter into closed session due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified, having applied the public interest test. Is that agreed, members? So essentially we're staying in public session. So if we could turn to pages 1 to 4 where we have the minutes. Are there any comments that anyone would like to make in connection with the minutes on pages 1, 2, 3 and 4? So are the minutes agreed, members? Thank you very much. If we move to agenda item 9, this can be found on page 5 of the papers. Are there any comments that anyone would like to make in regard to the forward plan? No? No comments at all? Okay, I move that the forward plan be noted. Is this agreed, members? Thank you. So if we turn to page 13 of our agenda pack, this is for the fees and charges for 24-25. Please do remember we've got the 2 additional pages as well, which we took under the urgent items section. And I will now, I think we're being joined by Mr. Lovegrove. Thank you. And we will go to Councillor Cooper, please, to introduce the item. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much. So first and foremost, there is an update to this, which relates, there was an error in the original papers. So there was nothing relating to there was an increase which had wrongly been attributed to parking charges at the Sanding Road car park. And I understand that was originally Sanding Road was taken off because it's part of the Maidstone East development. It was added back on as a contingency because it's likely that there will remain parking into the new financial year. So there just to confirm, folks, there is no planned change to the parking fees at that particular site, like there isn't anywhere else. And also, the development control fees weren't set when we got the original papers through. They are now set, and the report pack has been amended as such. First thing in here, slightly disappointingly, they're in the cross-cutting objectives at the front of the pages. I didn't see any climate change and biodiversity commentary. So obviously that's something which we do like to have at the forefront of our minds with every decision we make, and that has been fed back, and I hope that will be in future reports. I think this report is fairly self-explanatory. And obviously it forms part of the budget setting process. So there is an overall increase in income if these changes are agreed and get put into the budget process of just over £250,000, and that amounts to a 4.6% increase in the budgeted income figures for this committee. Now that's made up of no increase to parking fees. They've been set at a level which reflects demand, and there's a consistent approach across the fees. I think it's also very important, particularly in town centre areas and in areas where there are shopping districts around the borough, that we want to attract as many people as we possibly can who either work or visit such retail premises. Building control has obviously increased, and as a result of changes from central government, and planning fees, these are set nationally. There's been a headline increase by 35% for applications for major development and 25% for all other applications where we're under a recovering income. So I think everyone will be pleased to see that we will be getting an increase in income there, which will reflect the costs. I'm certainly happy to take any questions, and anything that I can't answer that's remotely technical, Adrian is here. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
It's always good to see that you've got backup. Councillor Trubinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The planning increase fees, I'm quite happy with them, but there is just one little thing I was going to ask. On page 36, the alterations, extensions to 2 or more dwellings, including works within boundary, has gone up by 146.6%, which kind of seems quite a lot when you take it into account with all the other ones. About halfway down, page 36. It just seems, you know, kind of a bit of a large increase compared to the other ones.
If I may, Madam Chairman, so there is a new subdivision in how the charging structure operates. So it isn't as such that there is a dramatic increase in one, it's that some charges have been moved from one section into another.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Trubinski? Thank you. Councillor English.
We don't have any great leeway on most of the planning fees, as these are set nationally. One of the few fees we do have some degree of control over is the pre-application fee. Are we content that we are now at the right level? Because we, as the papers refer to, we were possibly substantially undercharging compared with some of the other authorities in Kent.
The last time this was compared, we were sort of pretty much spot on there, so I don't think there's been any dramatic change. So yes, in answer to your question, yes, I'm fairly content, and so is the leader of the council for that matter.
In that case, the report needs altering because it says we were charging less than the cohort in Kent, because that's it does say that in the report. So I suggest if that's not the case, we need to amend it.
Can you just let me know which paragraph that is, and I will record that. Perhaps we can take that offline, Madam Chairman.
I have to email that to you because it's a long report, but I will.
Okay, are you happy with that, Councillor English?
Anything on planning fees, which we're talking about? The only other fee that we did have some discretion over was road naming fees. Are we content with the pitch on that?
I have to say, road naming fees is quite niche, and it isn't usually something which is at the forefront of my mind when I'm looking at how we can adjust fees and charges.
Can we just check on that, because we've been some years we've massively overemphasized the amount of business there was, and some years we've massively underestimated. So I just want to check that we've actually got that right.
I will pick that up with Adrian and DM.
Okay, are there any other questions? Councillor Conyard.
Hi, just a quick question about some of the building control rises. One particular section of rises is across the board 5%, whereas other rises are obviously 14 or 4.3, just basically rounding to figures. Would it not be easier to try and keep it rounded so there's some consistency across the board? We're talking pennies either way, so we're not, yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't hear a word you were saying. All I heard was building control, and then there were some figures quoted. Madam Chairman, I apologise, but if it's what I think it is, I'll answer any old question first, and if I answer the wrong question, if I can have another go. If it is relating to building control, that has been updated in any case, because we were originally working off what we essentially were estimates, and that's part of the update.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Conyard?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, Councillor English.
Yeah, I found the reference I was referring to earlier. It's about 2/3 of the way down on page 20. Pre-application fees have also been increased. It's based on benchmark, which said we were low cost. I just wanted to check that we have increased those appropriately.
Yeah, that's partly because fees haven't gone up in previous years, Madam Chairman. Yeah, the building now is 5% the right one, because that has changed.
That's still correct.
That is still correct.
Right. So as part of the process, they do follow the policy around how they make the assessment of what the right increase is. So they do look at market rates and the costs of actually providing the service. So I know Rob in the background has done all that and gone through that and done that. So we do some little assessments ourselves. So selfishly, from a finance perspective, I'm trying to make as much possible. So we've been through that and had that sort of competitive competition to make sure it's the right level. So I think it's the right level.
Okay, are there any other questions that anyone wants to ask? In that case, I propose to move the recommendations on page 14. Thank you, Councillor McKenna, for seconding that. Is that agreed, members? Is that agreed, members? Thank you very much. If we could then move to item 11, which is the town centre strategy update. Now, you may recall that there were questions and references to this at full council last week, and Councillor Burton is here in listening mode. We're also joined by the Chief Executive, Mrs. Broom, as well. So do you wish to open, please, Councillor Burton? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As you've rightly pointed out, we did actually have some comment on this at full council only last week, and I think one of the things I said is I've been working with group leaders and the town centre users group, the ward members for the town centre, and trying to bring as many people as possible up to speed with the town centre strategy. So I don't want to be thoroughly repetitious in what's already been said. As our chairman has pointed out, this really is an opportunity for you all to speak back and give some thoughts and some commentary. Probably the most relevant page in what we have in front of us is the page, and I'm just finding it now, page 123 in the agenda pack, which is actually setting out a timetable for the next steps. In all honesty, we'd hope to have something pretty substantial by way of a draft out to consultation now, but we can't rush something and bring something that's not ready. It has been quite clear as we've gone through the process that actually you start with an assumption, you challenge it, that leads you to something else, and we need to take some deeper dives as the report sets out into some of the data and some of the predictive analytics about what the town centre retail square footage requirement is actually going to be. There's going to be a bit of crystal ball in there, but there's also going to be some metrics behind that to guide our thinking. And let's all be candid with one another. There is an election not too far ahead. And I think this always has the danger, like anything else, of becoming a little bit of a political football. So I think pre-election, we've got to be doing that deeper dive and learning and understanding. And then I think post-election, it'll be for whoever's in the driving seat to put final stamp on it. That's being really candid about this. As I say, really keen to hear what your thoughts are. I'll just throw in a two pennyworth on that page 123. Next steps in 2024, last but one box up, transport and movement. As I've sort of mused this more, I'm not so keen on pursuing a massive wide area look at the urban traffic control system. And I think we've got to be realistic, but I do certainly think there's some areas of investigation on some very specific timings of pedestrian crossings and so on through the town centre. But just the way that's written, it does imply that we might be looking further, and I'm not minded to do that at the moment. But as I say, really keen to hear what else you might have to say, in listening mode, and happy to help with any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burton. Councillor English, I know you've waved at me twice. I have seen you. You are first.
Sorry, I was just checking. Couple of questions, and there was some discussion, I think, of bringing the lighting and greening strategies forward as a standalone document. So I have to say that does have some merit. I may be missing it in this document, but I don't see that in here. Is that a separate report? Okay, well, that would explain that then. I would personally say I would hope that those come forward fairly promptly, because those would at least potentially be less, shall we say, problematic in whatever way. In terms of the broader discussion and sort of following on from transport, and also from the previous discussion, if we are going to have an increase in town centre living, and we are going to have some sort of increase, I mean, the debate is simply about how much and where, but we are going to have an increase, and we already have an issue. We are going, in my opinion, and I have raised this before, going to have to seriously review our approach to town centre car parking and our own car parks. Because if we are going to have developments which, for all sorts of reasons, including economics, are not going to have much car parking of their own, and also for revenue reasons, I think the council needs to consider maximising the residential use of our car parks at night. And if we don't do that, we're going to have serious problems with actually putting residents into town centre residences without car parking, because we can say what we like, but there are a lot of jobs, particularly that affect the relatively low paid, where you can't get on a train to the city, where you have to commute to possibly a job in retail or hospitality somewhere around, I don't know, Chilston Manor, say a fair number of people go there, or other hotels and places, and you're not going to get to a hotel shift at the Tudor Park or wherever by public transport for a 5:30 start in the morning. I mean, it's not going to happen. So people are going to have cars, and there'll be disproportionately poorish people who are going to have those cars. So we have to be realistic, and I would hope that whenever this strategy emerges, that we are picking up these points. And even if it doesn't emerge, I think we should be picking up these points.
Thank you, Councillor English. I'm not sure who wants to answer first, whether it's Councillor Burton or Mrs. Broom. If we go to Councillor Burton first, and then you may wish to elaborate further, Mrs. Broom. Thank you.
Absolutely, you're pushing on an open door there with the thinking. It's almost like you've been listening to all these things I've been saying for the last few years. You're absolutely right, and I think it sets out very clearly here that one of the further strands of work is a complete review of town centre parking. So that's not just our own car parks, but of course they feature. But it's actually about how we really distill the reality of viability of building properties without parking. And I think this is a strategy decades into the future. So we also need to have an eye on what future technology will impact on this. And I hope that's where we will begin to run parallel streams of work with as we start to look at the integrated transport strategy as a whole for the borough, not just the town centre part. So I think absolutely on the same page of that broad thinking about parking. Thank you for reminding me about the lighting strategy and the greening elements. I think we're all aware we've got funding from the UK Prosperity Fund that is time limited. Separate reports will come. Those reports are based upon the work that's been going on developing the town centre strategy. Informally, we've been talking about it. This is the doings that I've been banging on about alongside the strategy and the theorising. So I think we'll see something very positive in January. I hope there'll be a lot to agree on, but it's about getting on and delivering for people of Maidstone.
I don't know. I'm so sorry, Mr. Britton. I didn't introduce you to the committee. Apologies. I think there was a little bit of toing and froing after the end of the last item. I don't know whether you want to add anything at this point for Mrs. Broom does, or entirely up to you. We can go to you first and then to Mrs. Broom. Right, Mrs. Broom it is.
So very little to add in terms of lighting and greening and timing. So the leader has said we need to be ready for implementation early in the next financial year because the funding we have is specific to that year and time limited to that year. We have had some really eye-opening advice from a company called Studio Decker that will allow us to explore both. Oh, something's happening with feedback. Both basic issues like safety and lighting for safety, and the role of lighting in a variety of other contexts, one for wayfinding and the other for highlighting our beautiful heritage buildings in the town centre. So I expect to see a wide-ranging report there. So far as car parking strategy is concerned, I think between you, Councillor English and Burton, you've highlighted a number of issues, and I think that serves to tell us that it's quite complex, it's dynamic, and I think we need to be prepared for some fundamental look at how we manage the need and the demand against the supply of parking that we have available. And that's not an easy thing to do. And my guess is we'll be looking to change that balance. And we'll be looking not just at parking for residents, but also private non-residential parking and parking for businesses as well. So this will be really comprehensive and no doubt involve a whole range of stakeholders, not least the County Council as a highway authority. So I just thought I would expand a little and I'm sure you know how complicated it is and controversial, but it's important that we're objectives led. We'll start with that. and then look at the data and the evidence, and then weigh up different options about how we can develop our strategy and policy differently, perhaps, than what we've got at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor English, did you want to add anything further?
I'm reasonably content with that answer. The Chief Executive is right. It is a very complicated and complex subject. I've raised it a number of times, and I understand why we haven't quite got to grips with it yet, because of the complexity, and some of these things are moving targets. But we have opportunities as well as drawbacks, not least in terms of some of the technology that's becoming available in terms of operating car parks, which had, so I'm content to leave it at that point. But I do think that, if this is an issue, we've got a lot of opportunities, but if we get it wrong, we will have the repercussions. So I'm more content to spend time on getting it right rather than have an answer here and now.
Did you want to come back on that point, Councillor Burton?
Not so much coming back on that, because I think that again accords with what we're all saying. Let's not rush this. Let's get this right. Let's not dally either. But there's it reminded me of one other small matter I wanted to just flag. That's the references to the maker creative spaces. I think something we all get. Yeah, that's good. And then you start scratching away. Well, what does that actually look like? How would that actually fund? So I'm not putting a red flag on that, but I just want to highlight that as an issue that I think is going to need a bit of gritty looking at. And I am just minded that there is a sum of money allocated to that from that same funding stream that we've just been talking about. And if we're not ready to actually discharge that spending directly to a maker space, because we don't know what that is yet, and if it's not needed for further research work, which might be a legitimate use of the money to flesh that out, then I at this stage are just saying very early to you, I'd be minded to perhaps move that to a few more light bulbs for the light bulb strategy, rather than use it for the sake of using it or losing it because we didn't spend it. But that's we might not be there yet, so I'm just putting that as a maybe.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Mrs. Broom.
Thank you. So far as any sort of short-term juggling of the UK SPF money is concerned, I think the most important thing is that we use it to its full, and we do have some flexibility to move between headings. So if we need to be pragmatic, I'm sure we will be. But so far as the town centre strategy is concerned, perhaps just to say why this has come to feature. I think the first thing to consider is that we need to be aware of the need to diversify the uses in the town centre for a variety of reasons, but primary amongst those are the need to diversify our economic base and employment base in the town centre, because we know that retail is contracting in terms of being a floor space occupier and an employer. Doesn't mean that the volume of sales is going down, it's just being done in a different way. So we need to think of alternatives in terms of what attracts footfall to help the overall vitality of the town centre. One of the reasons why we have looked at creative makerspace is that some of the evidence we have demonstrates that there is a latent demand. So there is more potential than is being expressed currently in the town centre. So some of the work that we may have done has demonstrated that. So this isn't a sort of random choice of alternative economic uses. It's one that's based in evidence. But as the leader says, finding ways to make that happen is quite a challenge. And so we need to step carefully about considering what our investment may be, who else we would like to invest, and how we bring the creative makers with us on that journey. To date, we've had really positive engagement from people who are in that sector. They think the town centre is a good location. It seems that there is appetite to become part of a project. But from all the research that we've done, there will be a key issue around pump priming, how the council acts as a catalyst, does it want to, and then the risks around that. So as we've said multiple times already this evening, that needs careful research, careful consideration, and to be conducted at a pace that reflects our appetite for change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Broom. I think it is fair to say that the council historically has always been an enabler, and we do have contacts with whether it's the third sector, national government, KCC. So I think, we're definitely we are the hub, and it's a question of all the other spokes, I think, being part of it.
And just one final point, it's been really encouraging that the officer who was put forward by KCC as our single point of contact for the town centre strategy has expertise in this particular area. So it's been really helpful in connecting us to the research and the potential sources of funding. So, while other areas might be more contentious, this has been really productive.
Good to see there's some joined up thinking. Councillor Drabinski, and then I've got Councillor Grigg after.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Page 122, there's a nice list of stakeholders. And there's, of course, a mention of the town centre user group. Well, I don't know about anyone else, but I feel that probably people who live in the town centre will use it anyway. People in the immediate surrounds will use it. What is being done about people in the rural areas around Maidstone? How are they being asked about what's required? How are they, because they're the people who, at the moment, jump in their cars and instead of coming into Maidstone, go down to Bluewater or Ashford. So to me, a major stakeholder here is places like Headcorn, Staplehurst, Marden, because they're the people you want to attract in. So, and there's no mention of that here, and I think it's something that needs to be thought about seriously. Thank you.
Councillor Burton.
So a couple of things to say in response there. Firstly, I've been looking at the early draft of the resident survey that would go along as a consultation exercise, and the questions are very geared to tease out that kind of understanding. But secondly, our resident survey, which we were conducting less than a year ago, and I remember going out on some of the road shows of that, places like, for example, Sutton Valence, and one of the questions was, when did you last go to the town, and why do you go, and why don't you go? And it was very, very clear to me that, well, when did you last go? Well, I haven't. Why not? I don't need to. Why don't you need to? Well, Amazon delivers this afternoon. Yeah, but you want to come out for a night. We've got fantastic gastro pubs in the village. So, I think we have to be really upfront with each other about what the demand really is. I think the trick will be to put something in Maidstone that you just can't get anywhere else. But I think being candid with myself, those people in the rurals are not going to visit once a week. I don't think so. But we need offerings, perhaps it's where our theatre comes in with some of its kind of not niche, but uniquely special to Maidstone and the Hazlitt. They fill that piece of the market that others don't reach in Marlowe's and the like. So to reassure, the questions are being asked, the work is being done to understand that. But my early thoughts are, it's pretty good in the villages, isn't it? That's why you live there.
Councillor Drabinski, do you want to come back on that?
I'd just like to say, I think you're right, but people in the villages at the moment are just complacent about Maidstone. They're not interested in coming in because it takes ages. There's no public transport to mention, and they don't know what's going on. I talk to people all the time and say, there's the La Taberna, lovely Spanish restaurant. And they go, what? Where's that? I don't even know. I've never heard of it. So there's a lot of things like that. I just somehow we've got to get those people out, because people in Maidstone and the immediate surrounds will use it anyway. But it's the people from outside, and somehow we've got to get them engaged and get them in. And how that is, I assume strategists will come up with that. Thank you.
You're right. One of the strands of work we're doing is around the leisure and the hospitality offering. I think even that's changing underneath our feet. You know, that heavy nighttime economy reputation that Maidstone's had for a long time, anecdotally, I think is rescinding. But we need to do a bit of research to actually ascertain whether that trend is for real or to be continued. But I'm going to reiterate a point. We're not going to get everybody to want to find a reason to come to the town. And without lowering the tone of the conversation, that resident survey speaking to people, why do you come to Maidstone? And speaking to some ladies, they said, well, when I need a bra. Well, what do you mean? Because I like to be fitted. But for everyone that said they wanted to come somewhere and be fitted, there were others that were content to order 3 different sizes and see which felt best. We will not convert everybody to a town centre user. That's the reality. But so that's why we've got to find these special, interesting attractions that make it a destination experience, not just a boring old retail exercise.
And people do the same with shoes as well, and sweaters and jackets. It's not just undergarments. Miss Britton, thank you for being patient.
Okay.
Over to you.
I was just going to mention too that we've got an engagement strategy that's been developed by our communications team to further this work going forward. So we've obviously got a really large amount of work to do over the coming months. And one of the pieces of work will be further engagement, obviously both with yourselves as members, but also with the community. So they're looking at different sectors of the community to engage with and how best to do that. And that includes young people as well, because we've identified that they're obviously a big group that are going forward and will be looking after the town in the future. That the time period's looking towards 2050. So when we're not around, they'll be around. So we need to know what their views and aspirations are for the town as well. So we're looking at all different age groups and different backgrounds, but you make a good point about the rural areas as well. So that will be part of the engagement strategy.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so I've got Councillors Grigg, Cleater and then McKenna. Councillor Grigg.
Thank you, Chair. Being asked to note this report tonight, I've gone through it, and I must say, as I was going through each part, I did get a little bit frustrated. I find it very aspirational, but I do wonder how much of it is actually going to be achievable. Saying that, you're obviously been working on it a lot more than me and you know the finer detail, but I can only go on what's been put in front of me tonight. There's a lot of words here, but in my mind, they don't actually say an awful lot. There are parts of it that are good, but I have severe reservations, particularly about how the problems that I see and have come from my residents are actually reported in here. One of the things is the retail offering, which I understand. We've got a piece here on the retail offering. I think the town centre is a brilliant location, always has been. Ever since I've lived here all my life, I've loved the town centre. I've been its biggest advocate. But you can't get away from the fact that that is not the case now, that people aren't coming in. And I understand what you're saying about people buying online and people having other ways to purchase. But the bottom line is on page 114, when we talk about this, consolidating the town centre retail offer to support footfall and the town centre offer, particularly for families, this will be achieved by identifying opportunities for strengthening the town centre retail offer by potentially relocating them closer together. What on earth does that even mean? What are you going to be doing? Are we just going to be bringing in, inviting loads of new shops to just come in and set up to make the retail offering. How is that going to be? It's aspirational, but I don't see how it can be achieved because of exactly what Councillor Burton has said tonight about other ways to purchase things. We have a bit about the river. Great, we've got to make more of our river. I've been a councillor for 13 years. I've heard it every single year, but nothing has ever been done about the river. My residents talk to me about resident safety and feeling safe in the town. Well, I need to see the finer detail of that to see how that can be achieved. How are you going to make your residents feel safer when they're in the town, especially in the evening? There are good parts of this report, but on the whole, I think it's a lot of words saying very little. And to note that we're asking for this to go forward with just the information we have in front of us, to me, I don't feel satisfied. I think it's a great idea, but I just don't think, from what I read here, it can be achieved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Grigg. Councillor Burton, do you want to come back on those points, please?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of what we're discussing this evening. I'll take one of those points, and you read it out, and you said I can't quite see what it's saying, but what it's saying is the amount of retail is clearly reducing, and the supposition coming forward is, well, let's bring that all together, rather than have one remaining shop over there, one remaining shop over there. Look, in brutal terms, I think the question that we've got to put to ourselves is, will there be sufficient retail to maintain a traditional Week Street, Fremlins type of shopping area and a mall? Will there be enough for both? If there's not, which style would we like to take forwards with Maidstone? These are the kind of questions, but if we just leave it, there'll be more charity shops, there'll be more vacant units, there'll be more casinos and slot machine places in between the last few remaining bits. So it's actually about getting the data, getting the evidence, understanding that. And that's what's taking longer than, I'll be honest, I ever thought, because once you scrape the surface, these are brutal, far-reaching 50-year decisions.
And that's without something like COVID happening, which I think also changed some people's habits too. Would you like to come back on that, Councillor Grigg?
I appreciate what you said, Chairman, about the fact we are neighbours, and I know that, and I know we're inputting into this, and it's our thoughts. But the things that are said in here about the community infrastructure, the traffic infrastructure, as councillors, we know what all of those issues have been. These do not cover it. This report does not cover it. It doesn't say how we're going to sort that or what our input's going to be. It's just words. I mean, spread opportunities and improve public services, especially in those places where they are weakest. Restore a sense of community, local pride and belonging, especially in those places where they've been lost. Empower local leaders and communities, especially in those places lacking local agency. It is just words.
I'm going to jump back and say, well, I'd be very happy to hear the committee's recommendations of what different words should appear on the pages this evening.
Mrs. Broom.
Thank you. I'll try and give a little bit of reassurance. But the first thing I'm going to say is that I think it's good to be aspirational. Be realistic about the challenges, but be aspirational about what we want to see going forward. I think at this particular point in time, providing a fine-grained, this is exactly how we are going to do things, isn't the stage that we have reached. So I'm just going to make a couple of connections in different parts of the report that I hope will show why the next steps are important and why it would be good to have your feedback on what those next steps are. So firstly, I'll just take the example you gave about the statement about retail, and Lisa's already described what the challenges are. There's going to be less. It needs to be consolidated. That leaves space somewhere else. We need to decide what to do with it. So in the next steps, we've put forward what, rather than get to the end of the process, what we suggest happens next. So if we turn to page 120 and paragraph 3.2, I think that demonstrates two things that are important. Firstly, perhaps we need a little bit more data for retail change. We've done work on retail capacity before. We need to make sure that the information we've got is contemporary and allows us to look forward. But we're going to need other people's input to define what it is at the end of the day people want to be, what will success look like. So we want you engaged in that conversation, with us being able to explain the as-is situation and then how we get from that to that vision going forward. Now, the work we've done so far can inform that. That's far too much information to contain in an update report. Turning to another topic that you've raised, particularly around community services and community infrastructure, you're absolutely right. We have highlighted that is a must get right issue. That's what you pointed out, I think, in paragraph 210. And then we suggest a way of engaging with yourselves and others about creating the high quality town centre living that we want going forward. So there is a stage of capturing that, weighing up what is practically viable. And I do think that we need a very serious conversation about that. And that's the reason why in that paragraph, we've suggested that we do a case study based learning to get greater understanding of what can actually be achieved. So I think there's lots of talk about what could be possible, but we need to get to a common understanding of what is actually possible. A lot of decisions have already been made for additional housing. Somebody's already mentioned it this evening. We need to have a frank and honest conversation about what can actually be achieved, how much community benefit in order is possible with the viability calculations. We have to come to a conclusion about whether we want things to happen or not, given those calculations. And that's why we've suggested, I mean, I think captured the phrase that Councillor English was using in our conversation. You know, we need that big conversation. So after that, we can put the plan together. I'm as enthusiastic about getting to the point of plan and doing things as possible, but I think we need these steps in between. So I just ask that you connect the two bits of the report, the must get right issues and the next steps issues. And if you don't think we're suggesting the right next steps, then tell us what you would like us to do, and then we can put that into the mix.
Thank you. You're absolutely right, and what you're saying is reassuring, and it's good to hear. And I definitely believe that we need to talk more about this. However, we were asked to note this report tonight, and this report doesn't reassure me. I understand what you're saying, but I've been asked to note this report.
Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Picking up from Councillor Trubinski's point, I've just had a quick look at the next document regarding Marden, and it's quite amazing that in 1842 they appeared to have better public transport than what they have now. And I think the point you're making, if you want people to come into Maidstone, they've got to be able to do it. If you want to come to the theatre and have a meal and a glass of wine, then somebody's got to drive, because there is no public transport to get you in I live in Maidstone. There's actually no public transport for me either from where I live, and I live fairly in an okay area. Blue Water seems to be doing okay because it has the shops that people want to go to. For me, if I want to get anything halfway decent to wear, I'll probably have to go to Blue Water because the shops that are here, despite going and talking to them, think everyone in Maidstone is a size 16 or less if you want something as a going out dress. And even the new Marks and Spencers that moved to Eclipse Park to give us greater range and greater ability to buy what we want doesn't carry that either. I'm not impressed, and I know a lot of people are. If you go on Maidstone Matters or Facebook to see the deep joy they get when their every delivery is sent to the wrong house, the wrong place, the wrong street, the wrong area. Online shopping isn't all it's cracked up to be. A lot of people are forced onto online shopping because they can't get the offer that they want within the town centre. For me, in terms of a strategy, there's the short term, the medium term, and the long term. The short term issue for Maidstone at the moment is that a lot of people don't feel safe in the town centre after dark. And unfortunately, I've experienced that myself on a couple of occasions where I've had to intervene personally where women are getting assaulted or abused or whatever. So in the short term, whatever the strategy is for the future, you won't get people back in unless they feel safe. So that links into crime and disorder and all of that. We also need to look at how we encourage, because that's what we need to do, encourage retailers to come back to Maidstone, because people are going to Canterbury, people are going to Blue Water, and if we haven't got the offer for whatever reason, we need to do that. Where dealing with KCC on public transport and with Arriva, etc., is going to be an issue. I know that. But if we want to get a better way forward for people to come into Maidstone and enjoy themselves, we've got to do that way. So I think for me, I agree with aspiration, absolutely. I have aspirations of Liverpool winning the Champions, League and the Premier League every year. But we haven't got Man City's money. But I think we also need to deal with what we can deal with in the here and now as well. So I understand the aspirational bit, but we need to do some work that we can do now to actually make people feel more comfortable being here. And I would concur a lot with what Councillor English and Councillor Grigg have said and Councillor Trubinsky. We all want people to come to Maidstone. It's up to us to make it attractive for them to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. Councillor Burton?
What I'd really value this evening is, could you help by describing what that work is? Do that work? What work are you proposing that's not being done?
Well, in response to feeling safe, actually having a presence in town that when incidents happen, they're dealt with. So I would presume that's talking to the town centre, neighbourhood policing, to look at the evening economy and make sure that people are safe when they're walking around. I walk around here quite a lot, and I'm not easily phased on most things. But to have a presence around town where you can't even go to the police station if something goes wrong because you stood outside on the phone talking to someone in the control centre. So even having something like they did elsewhere in the country, where the police took over one of the empty shops, to have it as a drop-in, where people could feel they could go in, get advice, etc. But the point is, if you're in Maidstone of a night and something's going on, screaming, shouting, arguing, there are no police to deal with it. That would be the first step that we could do. We have one Maidstone and we see them walking around, but once it gets late at night, obviously, basically you're on your own.
I think all those things are being done, and perhaps we could ask the chief to, add a bit of detail to that.
So in terms of the point that you make, which I'm going to sort of make a bit shorter, it's get on with things that need to be done now, don't wait for a strategy. And so far as community safety is concerned, I think we've got both components. There's what we do now to address the here and now, and the what occurs in the town centre that may cause people to be frightened at particular times of day, or actually to experience the crime themselves. And then there's the how do we design things out so that there's a prevention angle, and that's the more strategic element. So far as the short term is concerned, we have worked very closely with the Maidstone Part of Kent Police and the Police and Crime Commissioner. And I'm sure you're aware that we were awarded funding as a result of that, which has led to the neighbourhood task force in the town centre. But I agree with you. You can't have somebody everywhere or all the time. I think we have seen some really positive impacts from that in terms of the harm caused by crime and antisocial behaviour in the town centre, but there is still a long way to go. It's well known, I think, that I live in the town centre and perhaps experience some of those things on that you do, and so it's not surprising that other people do as well. So I wonder whether there is a crossover here to making sure that you're aware of the community safety work, and the community safety partnership as well. And then just one other thing to highlight, within the report, we've mentioned a stream of work on leisure and hospitality. Just to put a little bit of flesh on the bones for that, we've already done some analysis around licensing in particular, about how licensed premises relate to residential premises. And in conversation with the area commander for Kent Police, they're happy to participate with us fully on that and share their data. He has undertaken a number of detailed taskings recently in response to more violent crime, and they've designed interventions as a result of that. So I don't think we'll ever create a perfect environment, but I do think that there are strenuous efforts being made to tackle the things that occur on a daily basis, and we are seeing improvement as a result.
Thank you, Mrs. Broom. Councillor Cleater, did you want to add to that?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think one of the other things, and you have put in that you're talking to the ICB and the community, I think as part of that partnership where you need to be talking to probation and the mental health team as well, because part of the issue that we see, and if you leave here quite late, we do have, and I know we work really hard on homelessness prevention and that, but we're still seeing the number of people increase because of various national reasons. We know that, and actually we're one of the better performing councils in terms of supporting people in homelessness. But unless there's that joined up approach, I think that talking at an ICB level is okay. Actually, it's what happens when it leaves there, and I think it's that boots on the ground, if you like, the people who are actually delivering the services, that I think that's where the getting together needs to come. And I have spoken to in a meeting, and I will email you over the details of the person in public health. Don't know whether you've been dealing with her, who's dealing with the what we would call in the old days dual diagnosis, which is drug and alcohol and mental health. And they've got some really good public health strategies to working with multi-agency to do with that. But I'll pass those details on if you haven't already got them, Alison.
Okay, so on my, did you want to come back on that or no? Okay, so on my list, I've actually got councillors McKenna, English and Jones. I'm going to change the order a little bit because we haven't heard from either Councillor McKenna or Councillor Jones. We have heard from you, Councillor English. So the order will be McKenna, Jones, English.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There are some, I suppose, questions in here somewhere. Councillor Cleater and Grigg have sort of stole my thunder there. Now, it's obviously very apparent from the discussions that we're having, both obviously Councillor Burton and Mrs. Broom have got the answers. So there's obviously loads and loads of work going on. You know, that there's no doubt about that at all. You know, I really tend to agree with what Councillor Grigg said. You know, this is very, very aspirational, which is great, which is fantastic. It does almost sound like it will be a strategy that's going to fix the town centre and everything's going to be okay. I wonder, we will be judged on what we don't achieve, not on what we do achieve, because that's the way social media works now. You know, we're very much judged on our failures as opposed to our successes. I sort of want to understand a little bit more about these consultations and how the safety and crime element of that. What was people's general response to that? Because for me, that is the reason. You know, I would never bring myself and my partner and my 2 children up towards Brenchley Gardens. I wouldn't do it, categorically not. Now, it may well be that it's absolutely fine and it's really, really safe, but we only hear the bad parts. I don't know that our comms team is communicating. Look at all this great work we're doing. You know, the things that you're talking about, do we actually hear that? In the world of social media, we hear this is happening, that's happening. You know, the videos of when there was the knife incident out there, you know, that's what we see because that gets shared so much more than actually all the amazing good work that we do. And I would go to Blue Water because I feel safer. Realistically, I'm probably less safe. But that's just the interpretation of how I feel. That is my worry. I think we need to have a great ambition. I just worry, you know, how much of this are we going to be able to achieve? What's the general consensus of people's safety? And, you know, how high up on the list was that when people were given reasons as to not to go into the town centre? But, you know, I do think, you know, just plain, regardless of everything that you're coming up with, just seeing a police man or woman makes people feel safer. Whether they can do anything in that situation, that Bobby on the beat, if you will, does make people feel safer. You know, I want us to have an amazing, you know, town centre strategy. I'm probably so far away from the truth with how I feel, but that's just someone with a family from what I see on my limited, you know, social media. It is a worry. You know, you hear rumours about people at House of Fraser looking to move out of the town centre. You've only got to go into House of Fraser, they don't have any lights on. So why would you go in there anyway? Because you can't see what you're shopping for because they can't afford to turn the lights on. So, you know, there's a massive part of this. But I do agree with Councillor Grigg. I think it's massively aspirational, but I worry that I'm putting my name noting something that does sound like actually we've got a plan to fix it all. And I think we'll be judged very, very harshly if we don't. But more aside of what was people's consensus around sort of crime and safety and how safe do they feel. And, you know, plaudits to you guys. And obviously I want to see the comms team telling us all the good work they're doing, because it is apparent that you are working on it. I just don't know about it as a normal person. So I want to know about it, and I want our residents to know that we are doing great work on it.
I think it's fair to say we do take every opportunity, Councillor McKenna, where we can, to say when there's good news.
please can it either go into the Borough magazine, if it can be put out onto Facebook, etc. So I think there is an awful lot of positive stuff that does happen. Unfortunately, I think it's fair to say that social media is a bit of a dangerous animal. As soon as there's bad news, everyone's all over it. Everybody has an opinion. So I think there's some really positive work here, and I don't understand what is wrong with aspiration. You know, if a child wants to be an astronaut, you don't turn around to them and say you can't do that. You try to encourage and foster their ambitions. So moving back to this document, I think it's fair to say it will not be a one-stop shop. It's not going to be created and that's where it stops. My understanding is it's an evolving document and there will always be changes that will be made, which is a positive thing, so that it will move forward as changes are made. We'll come back to you in a moment, Councillor McKenna, because I think Councillor Burton and Mrs. Broom wanted to add something.
I want to lift us up out of the weeds a bit here. We are the district council. We have planning permission levers. We have some licensing levers. I think we're a well-respected partner with a lot of these other authorities and agencies. We're not the police. We aren't the doctors. We can't directly intervene in a lot of these things. And you know, I've got to come back to this perception of Maidstone being dangerous. You know, you're probably more likely to suffer harm riding the Segway than you are coming to Maidstone. Let's be honest. It's not that bad. You know, we're doing what we can do. We're bringing the partners to the table, but let's be realistic about what we can actually do and get on with that bit. You know, actually lighting the town better is where we can make people feel safer and you know, shine the torch into the dark corners. That's what we can do. That's what the backbone of our strategy should eventually turn out in terms of deliverables. But let's not beat up Maidstone Borough Council for the failings of others when we're actually trying to work with them and encouraging them to raise their game as well.
Mrs. Broom, did you want to add something further?
2 points, if I may. Councillor McKenna asked how much do we understand or how much information might we have about people's perception of crime and disorder in the town centre. We do have considerable information. We do a regular, it's not every year, every couple of years, crime and fear of crime survey. So we do have good information and we do use that to direct the resources that we do have in order to tackle those issues. And you've mentioned Brenchley Gardens, and that has received considerable attention as a result of what I've just described. And you might just want to go and visit it and see if you can help dispel some of the myths. The second point I would like to make is the role of strategy and policy in placemaking. So this is for the longer term, about creating places that do feel safe and do discourage, simply because of the way they're designed or the things that go on in that place, bad behaviour. So I totally take your point that enforcement is an important consideration, but also important is the way in which you create a place which has natural surveillance and people in it. And I talked earlier about increasing footfall. Those are the sorts of things that are more preventative in terms of crime and disorder. And I think the second important element there is how we create the environment in which people want to invest. You mentioned House of Fraser and maybe it's fragile, or it might have been Councillor Cleater. I'd ask you to give some thought to what we've achieved in Jubilee Square. before we made the interventions on the public realm improvements, Jubilee Square was not as vibrant as it is at the moment. And it's been quite resilient actually during the pandemic. It's not perfect. There's been turnover in the premises, but there's also been a lot of investment. So I just speak to that as part of the power of what a district authority can do in order to bring about more resilience and vibrancy in the town. So I think we, as the leader has said, we just perhaps need to, for the moment, lift our heads a little bit above the weeds and look at those opportunities. And a final point I will make, and this isn't intended as a dig, but it is intended as a catalyst. You are all community leaders. You influence as much as others on social media what the public or the visitor or the resident thinks about our place. I'd like to think that you would find the positive and promote that, because personally I think that's a really important role to play in extolling the virtues rather than focusing on the negatives.
Absolutely, Mrs. Broom, I agree with you.
I want to come back.
We should,
That's okay.
yes,
Oh,
we will come to you in a moment, Councillor Canner, if that's all right. I think Mrs. Broom is absolutely right. We can actually talk up the place rather than talk down the place. And I think there's an awful lot of people who are councillors who always look for the bad rather than the good. Councillor McKenna, over to you.
Thank you. I don't disagree with any of that. And what I actually said in there was I am probably wrong about all this. If we talk about perception, firstly, David, riding the Segway is a piece of cake. If it's about perception, come on down and I'll show you how safe it is. But it was a backwards compliment in saying I probably don't know all of the good work that you're doing. You know, it wasn't just a put down, put down, put down. I actually finished with the chances are I'm actually wrong about this and I want to see it from the comms team. I was just worried that what is a very aspirational document, and that's absolutely fantastic, we will be judged on our failures, not our successes, because that's just the way it is. And again, Madam Chairman, on the Borough magazine, you know, we've got to target our age group. And I think social media is a massive, I don't use it. I'm awful on social media, but I know how important it is. But this wasn't a dig out Maidstone, dig out Maidstone, dig out Maidstone. As I said, the chances are I was probably wrong. And I made that statement. I clearly am. It was just, let's make sure we're telling people so we know. If we weren't all proud of Maidstone, we wouldn't be doing this job in the first place.
So, Councillor Jones, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're up against it really. When I mean, we've spoken a lot about Blue Water tonight. You've got free parking, all the shops that people want, and it's regularly used, obviously. I mean, I have to say, I don't know any of my friends that come to Maidstone to go shopping. I don't come here to go shopping. I don't know what it is that we've got to do. Obviously, I'm new to the council. I don't know what financial incentives are offered, but we have to get these big shops back into the town centre. I think Next moving out didn't help. M&S moving out didn't help. We have the old traditional shops like Cornell's, which was a beautiful jewellery shop in Gabriel's Hill. I mean, it'd been there for, I don't know, 200 years, and that's gone. And it's like the heart of Maidstone it's and I don't know what we're doing to and I'm asking the question, what incentives are we giving to these big and independent quality shops to come back to Maidstone? Because when you walk down the high street now, you see vape shops, you see mobile phone shops, you see charity shops. It's not attractive, and as for the river, I've always thought that it's a big lost opportunity, but I don't know how what we do to connect the shops to the riverfront. You go to like Canterbury, you walk along the river to get to the shops, and it's all grassed and open and beautiful. But here you've got a dual carriageway that just cuts the river off from the shops. And yeah, I mean, I'm just asking the question really, is what we've done to date to try and get these big shops back. Thank you.
Councillor Burton, to you, please.
In my view, the only thing that could be done is to ban people shopping online. And we all know you can't do that. If you sort of take a step right back from this and, you know, Blue Water gets mentioned, what is Blue Water doing that Maidstone could be doing and isn't? I think we're looking at it completely wrong. The whole retail sector has already done what I'm suggesting we need to do for what we have in Maidstone, which is consolidate. Retail in this part of Kent has consolidated to Blue Water because there's enough for a Blue Water. There probably is not enough for 2 Blue Waters or 3, or even 4 1/4 Blue Waters in Canterbury and Dartford and Maidstone and Gravesend. There isn't enough. So the retail market, the retailers themselves have recognised this and they have consolidated. What could we be doing? We don't own the shops and we don't set the business rates. Now, I'm pretty confident there's a heck of a lot of shops out there. You could probably go and rent it for £1 a year if you paid the business rates. So, I mean, there are major incentives out there. But the retail demand has changed. So let's stop saying, what can we do to get the shops back? They're gone. The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, he went half a century ago and it changed. And now it's changing again. And let's embrace that. And the town becomes a destination, somewhere to go to the niche theatre, somewhere to go and meet friends, somewhere to come and exercise, somewhere to come and enjoy leisure activities. And there will be some element of specialist shops or shops that are showrooms, but let's stop going back. You're not going to get them back. There isn't enough retail in Kent, let alone Maidstone.
Okay, I do feel as if we've given this debate as much as it needs to. And I think we're getting to the point where it's now becoming slightly circular. Councillor Cleater, you've just indicated, I've got Councillor English on the list. I'm going to draw a line under it at that point because I really do think it's becoming circular. So, Councillor English, to you, please.
A lot of the work that needs to be done on dealing with law and order issues, antisocial behaviour, is in fact being done and has been being done for some time. And I have to say that although it's a work in progress, Brenchley Gardens has, and the top end of Week Street has improved, and the figures and the experience of myself and others personally show that. I have to say that sometimes perception is worse than reality. I've gone on social media and people have been talking about murders in Maidstone, and when you look at it, it was 1 week and it was all over. 2 murders in Maidstone in a week. Unsafe Maidstone town centre. One of them was in Snodland, which last time I looked wasn't in Maidstone. And the other was in Maidstone prison, which is, yes, it's very tragic, but you're not at risk walking around Maidstone town centre.
Councillor English, I don't like to interject too frequently, but what does this have to do with the town centre strategy? Can we stay on subject, please?
A great deal. The debate has focused on, to an extent recently, on danger in the town centre, and that's why we have a problem. Yes, we do have a problem. Part of it's real and part of it's perception. We need to address both. And one of the things that makes people feel unsafe is when you get environmental hazards and a look of a place being badly maintained. It may sound peripheral, but actually it has a big impact on how safe people feel. So one of the strands that's being talked about at the moment is a major clampdown on fly tipping and associated environmental crimes. We need to really, really push that. because I know it sounds trivial, but it isn't. Perceptions of places are often influenced by how much fly tipping, a mess, and general disorder there is in an environment. And that will make a huge difference if we get on with that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Cleater, you are the last speaker on this item. That's it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to respond to Councillor Burton, in terms of what you were saying, these shops are gone, etc., etc. That's all well and good if you've got a car and can get to Blue Water and elsewhere, but we absolutely represent people, whether through age or disability or socio-economic, that actually Maidstone is the only place they can shop. So I think we need to take that into account as well when we're doing this strategy, because to be honest, it sounded as though you were saying, well, we may as well give up on it, you know, and I don't think that's what you intended, but that's what it sounded like. And actually for a huge group of people, and I would say Councillor McKenna, myself, Councillor Wilkinson's, the two Councillor Wilkinsons represent a group of people that actually that may disproportionately affect.
Okay, so I think, did anyone to respond on that? I mean, as I say, I feel as if we're going
I
around in
think
a
there is a
circle.
halfway decent bus service to Blue Water already because there's demand for it and it's used.
Okay, so if we turn to page 109, we have two recommendations here. The first is to note this report. Second is to approve the next steps, which is for the Cabinet to then work out, what's happening. Bearing in mind there have been a variety of comments around the table, I'd suggest we vote these on an individual basis, because I wonder if there might be an element of disagreement. If that makes things simpler, we can do it that way, or we can just take the two together separately. Okay, I thought so. So if we go with item 1, this is to note the update that we've had in the report that is found on page 9. So all those in favour of the update? Okay, thank you. All those against? And abstentions? I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the word. Thank you. So that's item 1. If we could move to recommendation 2, all those in favour of recommendation 2? Okay. All those against? And abstentions, please. Thank you. Okay, so if we're looking at recommendation 1, we had 4 in favour, 2 against and 3 abstentions. So item 1, yeah, the report is noted. And then for item 2, we have got 4, is that 6?
6-4.
Oh, sorry. 6-4 and 3 against, sorry, 3 abstentions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Gregg.
Chairman, with regard to item 1, can I have my dissent noted, please?
Yes, of course, we can do indeed. So with item 2, that was also carried. So both items, one was noted and the second one was agreed. If we could now turn to agenda item 12, please. This can be found on page 126 of your agenda. So we're just having a little bit of a swap around. Mr. Edgerton and Mr. Gilbert are joining us, and I believe Councillor Cooper is opening, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I bring to you the Kent Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan, aptly named KC WIP. So this is our response to the consultation on the KC WIP, which runs from the 1st of November of this year to the 10th of January next year. And it's the first of potentially 2 stages of consultation. Next stage is expected some point next year, with adoption of the plan expected later in that year. This is part of the government's local walking and cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and it's been a 10-year. It has a 10-year time frame, but it's a living document, so it is anticipated that it will be subject to regular review. It's been developed by the Department for Transport between 2016 and the present, and these plans to be used as the primary strategies for walking and cycling investment decisions. So I'm sure you've all seen the consultation response. So what Kent County Council have come back to at the earliest stage is one route, which is a cycleway from Maidstone to Sittingbourne, and as great as that seems, my personal view is that there is probably greater demand for other, more localized cycle routes. I can think of plenty in the town centre, outside in the villages, linking the town with the villages, and the consultation response, or the proposed consultation response, certainly suggests that might not be. It might be a good idea, but it might not be priority. I'm seeking views this evening before the final copy of the consultation response has been is drafted and sent. And I just want to make everyone aware at this stage that I am seeking the views of the Maidstone Cycle Campaign Forum before I send this off. So I certainly will. I certainly hope to receive correspondence back from Duncan Edwards before Tom and I finalise the response. Happy to take any questions, and Tom's here to assist me with the technicalities. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, perfect. So we've got Councillors Trubinski, Conyard and English. I will start with you, Councillor Trubinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm beginning to feel a bit like the poor relation here, actually. On the letter, we've got cycle routes, Maidstone Town Centre to the rural service centres to the south of the borough, Staplehurst and Marden. I was just wondering where my headcorn's gone to.
That's a very fair point. Perhaps I could nudge Tom to adjust the response at this stage so that it says rural service centres, and perhaps we could include Headcorn, and maybe we could even go as far as Oldcombe for Councillor Trubinski. On a serious note, perhaps we should avoid listing every single thing, but it is a fair point, and I apologise that I hadn't spotted that error in advance.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Conyard.
Thank you. Regards the response, I'm broadly supportive. R14-2, however, mentions a segregated cycleway along County Road. As somebody who has a property which overlooks County Road, it is an exceptionally low volume traffic road with approximately 6 cars per hour during daytime. Could that be noted that we would not be in favour of that, since it would be cause significant disruption to the residents in that area, both with the parking bays which are along that road next to the prison and with the overnight parking available on the other side of the road. Another point, generally on the route, it has the footpath in between Palace Avenue and Heathfield Road. This is presently very badly maintained by KCC. Promises to come out and fix vegetation from May have still not occurred, and it's now just died back naturally. That means that for people that have difficulty with mobility, they're quite often stung as they walk up there. If this goes into the suggested route, could we also note potentially that we would hope to see improved maintenance along this stretch and widening at the top, where actually walking 2x2 is difficult, let alone cycling and pedestrians.
that could actually be something that's brought up with the county member at this point in time, to see if they could take action on that. Councillor Cooper.
I think they're both very good points, and I'm quite happy to include them in the final consultation response.
Excellent. And presumably the final consultation response will be circulated to all members, won't it? Thank you.
Of course.
So, Councillor English.
I concur with Councillor Conyard in relation to the somewhat strange proposal that's come up about putting a cycleway in County Road. It seems to be the least necessary piece of work in the history of cycling. I would observe that in terms of the priorities I mentioned here, in terms between Allington Lock and Barming Bridge, there is already a cycleway there. Improving it west of Maidstone, or west of Tovel would be more exact, I suppose, does pose some problems with biodiversity and would not necessarily be easy and straightforward. It wasn't an issue between Tovel and Maidstone Town Centre, but it could be an issue on the area between Tovel and Barming. So I think one need to be very careful about the design. Actually, the real work that needs to be done on that route is to do something about the fact that you can't get from the final leg, and which has fallen into the river for some considerable time and has been impassable. I have to say, I would rather County Council actually did something about making the routes that already exist passable rather than building new ones. That's an observation. In terms of the other proposals, I suspect the Sittingbourne proposal would at least find favour with Councillor Thompson, who actually teaches in Sittingbourne and frequently cycles back from there. So there might be at least one user here around here. But all joking aside, I think that if it were to go ahead, and there is some merit in considering the alternative route, because what I wouldn't want us to do is if Kent County Council were only minded to go forward with the Sittingbourne route, for us to get no investment whatsoever on this. And I would like to see that in that situation, if that seems to be the way they're going, that the alternative route for the Sittingbourne route was the one that came forward rather than the original route, which doesn't seem to be the most sensible journey to undertake with a cycle, but or walking, come to that. So in general, I support the proposal, but I actually do think that it'd be nice to actually get the ones that are in place working rather than necessarily looking further.
I don't think there's anything to come back on because is there, Councillor Cooper? I think Councillor English was saying he's largely supportive, so that's a good thing. Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, like my colleagues, County Road, really. Good luck getting the Serco people to do their deliveries. If it's all closed off, are they going to do a new entrance to the prison? And anyone who attempts to cycle from Maidstone to Sittingbourne should get a medal, as far as I'm concerned. That just seems completely off the wall proposal. And I absolutely concur that actually the alternative as laid out in Councillor Cooper's response would be a lot safer for cyclists. I think, for me, again, the River Medway towpath is heavily used anyway, and certainly for a lot of people going to work on the various estates, which is to be welcomed. But again, the maintenance of that and the removal of the hogweed that pops up very regularly along where the old Springfield site has been an issue in the past, and if it's not properly monitored, can then be an issue again for whether people are cyclists or people walking. I think we welcome the joint cycling walking strategy, but I think there's going to be a lot of education needed for the public if you live in Europe, you know that side for the walking, that side for the bikes. But even where we've got really well laid out cycling and walking paths, you see people crisscrossing across, which leads to anger and frustration on both sides. But I broadly welcome this response. But as I say, why they're delegating County Road, I don't know. They certainly must have in for their own councillors. Or maybe they're going to stop the car park and everyone's going to cycle to county council meetings. I don't know.
Did you want to come back on any of that, Councillor Cooper? Or?
Just on the last two comments, there's some frantic note taking going on either side of me. These are certainly things which should be fed into the consultation. In terms of the condition of, so you mentioned the hogweed, Councillor Cleese mentioned hogweed. That's not really part of the consultation, it's more strategic. But these are serious points that perhaps should be fed back to county councillors as well, and in some scenarios, perhaps the Environment Agency, depending exactly where they are. But thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I obviously just, the one point I want to pick up on here is the route between Maidstone Town Centre and the proposed Lidsing Garden community. I'd like to invite Councillor Cooper to walk up Boxley Hill, because you can't. And whoever, I know that this is part of the local plan, and this walking route between Lidsing Garden and Maidstone, you haven't got a hope in hell of getting people walking or cycling up Boxley Hill. It's horrendous.
Chris Boardman's
I've done it. Well, you might have done it, Clive, but I mean, it just beggars belief. Whoever's written this, I would like to walk with you up Boxley Hill, because it cannot be done. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I agree. I drive regularly up to Boxley Hill on the occasions when I take my wife to work. I have seen people cycling up there, but I have to say they're quite brave. I agree. I wouldn't walk up Boxley Hill. But we have to. Obviously, the strategic planning team who have drafted this have to base their what they write based on what is in the immersion plan. But certainly, I don't disagree with you on that particular point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Anybody, are you indicating? Yes, Councillor Trubinski.
Just a very quick comment, actually. I mean, I don't know if anyone knows the A127 in Essex, runs from Gallows Corner right up to Southend. It's had a cycle path on it since I was born. And I don't think I've ever seen a cyclist on it. And I think we have to be careful with some of this stuff, because it's just a waste of money.
Okay, so having listened to the comments that are made, if we turn to page 127, we have one recommendation which relates to the response to the consultation. However, members have actually made additional comments. So I propose adding the following language, and additional comments are included too. Is that okay? Perfect. Is that agreed, members? Lovely. So if we could turn to page 135, this is the Marden Conservation Appraisal and Management Plan, and it will be introduced by Councillor Cooper. Mr. Edgerton and Mr. Gilbert are leaving us, and Ms. Stevens and Mr. Fazzolero are joining us. Please select the correct nameplate. Councillor Cooper, would you like to introduce the item?
Yeah, thank you very much once again, Madam Chairman. And at our last PIDE meeting, I said that these conservation area appraisal and management plans will be coming through at pace. And indeed they are. Seemingly every week, an email comes through of another area within the borough whose conservation plan is being updated. So I am delighted, and it's something that we haven't been able to give the manpower to over the last couple of years, but we certainly are now. This relates to Marden, and I did contact local members for Marden and Yalding, and I did get some comments back from members, which I certainly fed back to the team. What I'm looking for this evening is sort of the views here, whether we can go out to consultation on it, and hopefully you'll be in agreement. I'm sure everyone has read the papers, and this is a very positive step, well, clearly a very positive step for Marden, and I hope that people will take it in that spirit and allow us to go out to consultation to garner the views of residents and groups. Thank you.
So we're making a change that was first established in the 1970s. Probably overdue. I think there's many people who would say it's overdue. We did actually have one of these last month as well, members, an extension to a conservation area. So this is nothing new to us. Councillor English?
I have to, well, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Conservation areas are only useful in any sense whatsoever if they have appraisals and management plans drawn up that you can actually use in development control and other policy documents. And this is a step forward to ensuring that once again we have conservation areas that are more than conservation areas in just name, which I'm afraid has been the case in Maidstone in many areas in the past. So I'm very, very happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor English. That's seconded by Councillor Drabinski and thirded by Councillor Spooner. Everyone's very keen. Is that agreed, members? Agreed, perfect. So if we could move to agenda item 14, thank you to both of you for waiting so patiently. It's much appreciated. I'm sorry your input was limited, but we really appreciate you being here this evening. So agenda item 14, we are being joined by Mr. Nelson online and Mr. Edgerton in the room. And as we discussed earlier, members, if we are going to go into the detail of the report, we will have to go into private session. But if we turn to page 194, this is going to be introduced by Councillor Cooper.
Once again, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Just before I introduce this report, with the permission of my friend, the Chairman of Scrutiny, this is subject to urgency rules, or the urgency protocol. I decided that it was certainly best to bring it to PAC this evening so that it could be discussed. But a call-in has been waived. The reason that call-in has been waived is to allow us to ensure that this response can be submitted within the time frame. If you wonder why it's been left so remarkably late, I think it's been pulled from two agendas because we have been waiting for information to come back from National Highways. Certainly nothing that the strategic planning team could have reasonably have done before now. I'm very keen that we do get this response in because there have been a couple of draft copies around which Maidstone Borough Council has not subscribed to, that our good friends National Highways have decided to put into the public domain. Therefore, I think it's, and that was the main driver of insisting that, well, perhaps not insisting, but being very keen to use urgency to ensure that we can get a response to this in so that we can put our views on record. So as members are aware of the very lengthy and detailed work that's going on with the Lower Thames crossing, it's currently undergoing independent examination, and there's National Highways has prepared statements of common ground with a range of key stakeholders, obviously including local authorities such as ours. And really, it brings the draft statement of common ground as it stands to committee. And what I'm seeking this evening is agreement from the Policy Advisory Committee to submit the consultation response which is quite technical in nature, which has been drafted predominantly by Eric. But I'm happy to take any questions, notwithstanding I appreciate that there is the small matter of yellow pages, but thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so members, are there any questions in relation to the statement of common ground for the Lower Thames crossing? No, nothing at all. In that case, could we turn to page 195 of your papers, where we have one recommendation, which relates to the submission of the statement prepared by Maidstone Borough Council. Is that agreed, members? Perfect. There are no further items on the agenda, so I will close the meeting. But before I do, I'd just like to wish everyone a very happy Christmas and a prosperous new year too, and a healthy one. And I hope everyone enjoys themselves. Thank you.